Welcome back, sewists. We're back with another fun, summery, easy swing dress. That's what my mom would have called it, or perhaps a trapeze style dress. I got this pattern recently. It was in a haul. It's Butterick 6994. We're going to do this version right here, which is view A, the shorter version. Because it's so full, it does take quite a bit of yardage if you go to the full length. It has an invisible zipper in the front for ease of getting on. I'm going to show you an adaptation in a minute. If you have some ability issues and you struggle with getting dressed, how we can even make that a little longer and easier to get in and out of, or if you want to use it for nursing. The only alteration I'm going to make is a little bit to the hemline, which I will show you in a minute. Let's look at our fabric, because I went stash shopping. I'm trying to sew up my stash. It's hard when you're a fabricaholic like I am. But I have this. It is a linen look, but it is a synthetic. I have pre-shrank it. I pulled it out of the stash and it had not been washed or dried, so I ran it through the washer and dryer. It washed up great. It is synthetic, which means it doesn't breathe great, but it is soft and light and sort of a breezy, but it has some firmness to it, so it should hang great in this pattern. I'm kind of excited to see it. And it's a coral color. I love coral. This is one of my top colors of it appeals to me. It's sort of like joyful looking. So we're going to make it out of this lovely coral fabric. It is 60 wide, and I believe I have just over 3 yards. So this is our fabric. Let me show you the pattern alterations and the outfit of the day.
Okay, let's talk about a few adaptations. This dress has a little placket in the front with an invisible zipper right here, just to make it easier to get on and off. You can also adjust it according to how you would like the neckline to lay open. This is the pattern piece for the front placket where the zipper is going to go. It also has a seam in the center front. It calls for a 9-inch zipper. However, if you would like to make this so that this front opens up even farther for either adaptation for disability, like difficulty getting dressed, or if you want to nurse in it, you could put a longer zipper in. Really, the only thing you need to do is lengthen this little front placket piece for as long as you want your zipper to be, and that's it. You can put in a longer zipper. Okay, if you're someone whose hemline doesn't hang straight from the side, so if you stand sideways and your hem is higher in the back and shorter in the front, or the opposite, maybe it's shorter in the front and longer in the back, but you want it to be straight, this is what the next alteration is. Now I have 2 issues, which is why I do this. One is I'm just fuller in the back, and the other is my posture. So I always lengthen the back a little bit to counteract my posture and full rear end. I've added 2 inches to the center back of the dress to help counteract that, so I have an even hem, but I need to ease that 2 inches away by the time I get to the center front so that I have an even hemline. This has a side panel, so what I did is I added my 2 inches at the very center back, and at the seam where the side panel and the back meet, I have 1 inch, and then I ease them into each other, nice and easy slope. A lot of the fullness in the very back. There's a big pleat back there, so I want to make sure that I keep a lot of the 2 inch there. Slowly ease it in, And then in the side panel, I go from my 1 inch back to nothing, and then my front is the way it came in the pattern, so that I ease away that 2 inches and it will hang nice and even on my body, hopefully.
Back at the camera a little bit so you can see my dress. I made this one, I want to say like 20 years ago. It may not have been that long ago. I need to look up and see when the pattern came out, because when the pattern first came out is when I made this dress. But I have it as a tutorial in a black and white polka dot too. So the title card looks like this. It'll be linked below. If you want to make this, this is one of my favorite go-to dresses. It just hangs great. And it would be very easy to throw a little cap sleeve in it. It's a sleeveless dress, but it would be hard to add a little cap or a little flounce if you want a little more shoulder coverage. I do always sew up here so that it stays in place. Let's look at alteration shoes. Let's talk just a little bit about choosing your size for this, because I am a full-figured girl and usually sew in the size 20, 24 range, depending, because especially for my hip line, for the lower half of the body. But because this is such a full pattern and it hangs from the shoulder and just swoops out, it really doesn't touch the body anywhere. It has a lot of wearing ease. So you don't need to add. Like, it could fit a lot of sizes once you get the shoulder and neckline right. So for me, I made sure that the shoulder and neckline hang where they need to. You don't want your shoulder to be too long. You don't want it to be too short. You don't want it to be crowded. You don't want it to be tight across the shoulder. So for me, I'm really more of a 16, 18 in my neck and shoulder, and the rest is bigger. So I checked my fit. I checked to make sure that there's plenty of wearing ease, and there's loads. So I'm cutting out a size 18, and that means that I'm kind of sort of a size 18 all the time on top. Whether I go up or down 20 pounds, this part stays pretty much the same. So I can wear this dress for a long time, no matter what my size fluctuation is, because it hangs only from the neck and the shoulder. So you want to fit this part the most. If you take your measurements, if you're full figured like I am, and you're like, oh, well, gosh, I need a 24, but you put the 24 on and the neckline is huge, the shoulder hangs way over, it's too wide across the back. Instead of fitting from shoulder to shoulder, it comes way up, way past your shoulder. It's not going to look like it fits right. It looks like it's too big for you. Make sure you fit for this, and don't worry about how it hangs below, because it is just going to hang and it's going to look great. That's the style and the look, and it'll just skim the body. I may try this with a belt just to see how it looks. I may not like it. I may just wear it as it is the little A-line trapeze style dress, which I'm pretty excited about. I kind of think my grandma would have called this a tent dress. Okay, we're starting to cut out. You can see my pieces. Grain line is really important. You want to measure your grain line. So you take your tape measure, you measure from the line to the selvage or the line to the fold, and you make sure that it's nice and straight. To do that, I'm going to take a pin and stick it in one end of my grain line, and I'm going to take my tape measure and measure to the edge of my selvage, because it's what's closest, to make sure it's not crumpled up. And it is 5 3/4. Then I'm going to go to the other end, set my tape measure in 5 3/4, and make sure my line is on it. And if it isn't, we'll swing it out till it is, or swing it in and stick a pin. And now it's on grain. Okay, I'm going to pin all these down. I have my front, my side, one pocket and one yoke. I have to cut another set of pockets and another yoke as we go. The yoke is the only thing cut on the fold other than the collar. So yoke and collar we have to cut 2 of on the fold. Everything else is will have seams, and we don't have to cut on the fold, which is super nice. So I'm going to just get this pinned down and cut out. I will actually roll it before I cut, make sure everything fits before I cut. Don't want to have any surprises. Do not play with the grain line on this. It will not hang right, and you will be sad. It will lay weird. We also want to make sure we transfer our markings. We've got lots of little notches. The circles are for pocket placement, which is really important. We don't lose that. And we also have notches for our collar and placket paste placement, for our zipper. I've already cut out my interfacing for my front yoke and my collar. So those are done. I just need to get the pattern pieces over here, right in here. Yep. I'm going to get my front placket right there. Perfect. Okay, I'll be back in a minute to show you the next part of how I'm laying this out. You can always look at the directions and follow how the directions do it. A lot of times I'll manipulate a little bit from the directions, but not always. Sometimes we get it pretty close to how they give us. Okay, so here is my last big piece. It's my back. We need two of these. There's this giant pleat up here. It is like an 8-inch pleat total. I've got one collar pinned on. Once I get these cut out, I have almost a whole yard down here that I just need to get another collar, another back yoke, and another set of pockets. So I'm going to get my pocket right here, actually, my second set of pockets. So I still have a pretty big piece left of this. I'm going to finish getting this cut out. I've already got my two pieces that need interfaced, and I'll meet you over at the sewing machine here in a minute. All right, now that we're all cut out, we have our interfacing cut, I always start by prepping, by fusing my interfacing pieces to whatever needs to be fused to. So go ahead and get your, and they actually show that on number 1. So we're going to fuse our facing and our collar pieces together. Once we've done that, let's go ahead and transfer our markings. So I'm going to take you over to the ironing board real quick and show you how to do the marking transfer.
Okay, transferring our markings. I have just come in. This is my side that's already been interfaced, so I'm going to mark on it. Marked my center back. I've marked my little notch, and this is my circle, and I've done it on both sides. So there's my circle, my notch, and you can see my center back. Here are my facings. I did the same thing. I marked the little notches. This is to help me to know where to start and stop my zipper. So there's my notches and the circle, and here's the little notch. This is for collar placement. So I got all those marked. I did one in yellow and one in red. I started to do yellow, and I thought red will be great because it won't show through on this fabric, and it shows it better in camera. So that's why I was switched to red.
Okay, so all of that's done. Step 2 has us stay stitching our neckline and then the little curvy part under the arm where the bias or where the princess seam is going to be. Now go ahead and do your neckline. That's never a bad idea. A stay stitch is just a stitch that stays in there to hold everything together, to keep it from stretching out where you have a lot of bias or where it's particularly a little precarious or delicate. The side seam one, or it's actually the princess seam one, I'm not going to worry about because I'm going to go ahead and serge. Before I put everything together, I'm just going to serge those outer side seams, or those outer seams for the front and the side front, because we're putting a pocket in there, so I need to, and a zipper. So I need to be able to press open both of those so that I can have the zipper and pocket attached. So I'm going to go ahead and serge all of those pieces before I move on and do anything else. So I'm going to stay stitch my neckline, and I'm going to serge around all my pocket pieces and around my front and my side front. The back can be serged together with the side seam because there's nothing going on there that we have to press it open. So I'm not going to worry about those for the moment. We're going to be working in the front for a few minutes. So I'll be back with you in a little bit after I get that serging done. Oh, and let me just say, as always, when I start, I run my fabric through my overlock and through my sewing machine to make sure I like my thread color and my stitch looks good and my needle's behaving. I'm going to overlock this in a red thread because I don't have this coral color, enough of cones of it, but I do have enough for just top stitching and zipper and that sort of thing. So I'll put a little close up so you can see my stitching and how that's going to look. I also pressed it under to make sure that I didn't have problems with my stitching shadowing through. This is not very sheer, but I might still want to slip with it. We'll see when we get it all together how it looks, but it doesn't look like I'm going to have much of an issue. No shadowing through at all. Also, just as an aside, I'm using a red zipper, a red invisible zipper. It calls for a 9-inch, which I do not have. I have a 20-inch here, I'm pretty sure. Yep. So I'm going to be just cutting it off the top so that when you have to have a zipper that's too long, we're going to sew it in, and then we'll cut the tails off after we get it all put together. We'll make sure to move the head down first. I'll show you that when I get to it. That way you can still use the zipper you've got. I have tons of invisible zippers. I just don't have any 9-inch anymore. I've used them all up. Evidently, I need to buy another. I usually buy like 5 or 6 of 7 or 8 colors that I use the most and just keep them, and I'm out. So I'm going to the 20-inch. so I don't have to run to the store, and we can keep sewing. All right, let's get our serging done. If you're not going to overlock, you could bias bind this, you could zigzag this edge, you can fold under and stitch. There's a lot of ways to seam finish. Because we're working with wovens in this particular pattern, you do want to seam finish. Wovens fray, and this fabric, though not terrible, definitely does fray. And I'm sure after a few washings and a few wearings, we would have quite a problem. Can you see the fraying going on? It would take no time at all for it to come apart. So overlocking is where we will start. Also, make sure you transfer any markings. Markings are important on this. We have collars, we have zippers, we have all kinds of things, and I transfer my markings to the back because that's the side we see when we're sewing it together. So I'm going to find my marking here and put that. This is for top of zipper. Now when I'm overlocking, I'm not taking anything off. I'm just going right along the edge. I'm also not going around the hemline. I tend to like to go back and do the whole hem together instead of individually. It's just a personal thing. So on this one, I've just done center front, and now I'm going to do the side seam. Actually, I probably should have, and I think I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go ahead and stay stitch my neckline. You want to just do inside your 5/8 inch seam allowance, or whatever your seam allowance is. I'm going to do this at about 1/2 to 3/8. You just want it to be stable. I'm going to not lengthen my stitch or anything. I'm just going to do a size 3 stitch. You don't need a back stitch.
This is the stay stitch, hope you can see it.
Okay, I'm going to keep serging. I'll meet you back here in a little bit. It's boring to watch me serge.
Okay, so we've interfaced and transferred the markings. We've stay stitched our neckline. I have not stay stitched this, but I've serged it, so I'm going to call it good. We're ready to do this, which is to stitch together our seam. It says to find the notch and sew below it 3 inches. So you just want to leave a little room from the notch to where you start sewing for your center front seam. And then we're going to put on our invisible zipper foot and start on the invisible zipper. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this. The reason they're having us do this is to give us room to work on that zipper, and then we'll just come back and sew up that little area below the zipper afterwards.
I have sewn together my dress along the center front, starting 3 inches below the notch, and I've gone ahead and pressed it to make that seam nice and pretty. I only pressed as far as I stitched. I didn't press anything above, and we're ready to install the invisible zipper. I have a video on how to do an invisible zipper, a little standalone. It's like 8 minutes. It looks like this. It will be linked below if you want to see just the invisible zippering process. If you want to do this specific kind of zipper, it is to me the easiest of all zippers. It disappears and looks just like a seam when you're done, and you just see the little tiny pole hanging out. And it takes its own special foot. So depending on your machine, like I have one specific to my Bernina, but you can buy a short shank, high shank, or an adaptable shank one in there of $10 or so, and it has all the little parts, and you can screw it onto your machine too. They're not very expensive, they're plastic, and they're easy to use, and they make this a dream. It literally, the zipper goes in the channel and it sews. You just set the edge of your fabric on 5/8, and you don't have to do a lot more. So the only thing is to make sure you keep your zipper straight, that you don't get it off center when you're going from side to side, and it will go in like a dream. So let's do our zipper real quick.
Now my zipper is too long, so you can see it hanging off the top. That's where we will cut it off eventually. Got the edge of my fabric on the 5/8. I've got the side of my zipper just hanging out up in that channel there, and we're just going to sew down. I'm not sewing too close. I want to make sure my zipper will, oh yeah, that looks good. I want to make sure my zipper will open. And I'm going to stop at the pin here. That is my notch. Okay, let's do the other side. Before you go to the next side, make sure that it zips up. I'm going to give mine a little test. And it zips, and you can see how it goes right to the edge, so we won't have, it will look like a seam. That's the goal. Okay, now, here's the bottom of my zipper. I'm going to take this side, we're going to flip it around, so we're going to line it up and go down this side. Okay, I've made sure measured everything so that my zipper is the right length, because I am working with too long of a zipper. And we're going to now go down the other side. Now, you could go from the bottom up if you want to, but I find that it's best to go the same direction both times. I have my 5/8 inch on this side. It always feels awkward to sew from this direction with the garment to the right and the seam allowance on the left. You can see I'm coming up to the end here. Right here with my pin is where I need to stop, so I'm going to pull it so it's not in the way. Okay, now we're ready to sew below and finish up the front of this. Okay, here it is sewn in. You can see how pretty that looks. It should look like a seam, it just needs pressed. Here's the little hole from where my zipper ends and from where the seam ended in the center front. You want to make sure that your collar lines up perfectly up here, or your neckline. The zipper should open and close easily, and all you should be able to see is the little zipper pull at the top. We're going to now go to the inside. We're going to attach. We're going to sew up from below the zipper to where we stopped in our center front. Make sure you pull that zipper tape out of the way when you go to do this. Just sink your needle in one end of the seam and sew to match up those two lines. Make sure the zipper's pulled out of the way as you do it. We have a lovely zipper in. You can see mine's too long. Here's my little tails up above, but it zips beautifully. I have gone ahead and give it a press. I'll show a little close-up of that here for you. We're now ready to start adding pockets. So we're going to line up our pockets right sides together. I have it pinned on the wrong side. This is the side I'll stitch on. It's easy to see, so we're going to sew pockets to our front dress and to our side panel of our dress, and then we're going to come back and do that. Pockets and side panels will be on in no time, and we'll be ready to move on. We've kind of done the hardest part of the whole thing, which is the invisible zipper, which isn't even that hard. All right, let's sew our pocket. Now, they top stitch the pocket. I might understitch it, though I will say my thread really disappears, so I may go ahead and top stitch it. Okay, so we're going to sew all 4 pocket pieces on, and make sure around that zipper you trim up all of your threads, because threads around zippers get caught and it'll cause problems with your zipper. We're going to get all of our ears on for all of our pieces. We're at step 7. Okay, so we're working on step 7 now, sewing pocket pieces on. They're showing it for the front and the side front panel. All right, back in a minute to put it all together. I have the pockets on all of the seams. I have now pinned or clipped on my side panel, my front side panel to my front and around the pocket, and I'm just going to sew it. I'm not going to sew like one continuous line though. I'm going to sew from the underarm to where my pocket is, and then from the hem to where my pocket is, and then I'll come back and sew around the pocket. I'm going to do that on all the pieces, and then we will have our front dress together. It does show top stitching the outside of the pocket. I have actually top stitched on the inside of the pocket. I pulled the pocket and the seam allowance together and top stitched to the inside in the front pocket, and that just helps keep the pocket from pulling through. I don't know if I'll come back and top stitch or not. We'll see. But when doing a princess seam line, the way to get that seam to go in easiest is usually to put the side piece on the bottom and the front piece on top. That usually will give you a better ease. Now, this one's not have a ton of ease, but if you need to, do that. And I'm going to start down here on this one right at the pocket. I'm going to sink right in that where my pocket ended. Put my glasses. And I'm going to make sure I'm backstitch so I don't get holes around that pocket, because I use my pocket.
So seam up to the pocket sewn. I'm going to come and do below the pocket, and I'm kind of pushing my pocket and all of its seam allowances out of the way so I don't accidentally catch them in my seam. I'm sinking my needle right where I stopped stitching when I put this pocket on, and I'm going to sew from there down. All right, now that I've done that, I'm going to come back and sew the pocket. And I'm actually going to take my little seam allowances together, and I'm going to stitch around the pocket. Pocket only, not catching dress this time. From the front, now I haven't pressed this yet, which I'm getting ready to do. Here's my dress. You can see I have a pocket right here. Now, if I want to, I can press this really well and come in and top stitch that pocket down if I want to. I don't know that I do. I'm going to give everything a good press though. I'm going to go ahead and sew in the other side, and that will get us through step 12. We'll be ready for 13, which is the back and the yoke. It goes really fast from here on out. So let me finish this, give it a press. We'll come back and work on the back.
All right, this is the seam that we just sewed. So here is my pocket. I did not top stitch it, but you can see on the inside, there's a little bit of stitching to kind of keep everything in place. So that's the seam. You can see how well hidden it is. Here's my center front seam. Here's the other one. And the pocket just pushes to the front like that. I've pressed it that way so it's nice and smooth, and we're ready to move on to the back. This fabric just presses up so pretty. I'm really pleased with how that looks. And here's a look from the inside. So here's my center front seam, zipper up here. Here's the seam. The pocket's pushed this direction just so you can kind of see how it looks on the inside. Okay, let's start working on the back.
So we are now ready to go on to the back. We're at step 13. I decided after thinking about this for a little bit that I'm going to go ahead and just serge all my seams and press them open for the most part. So I've finished off my center back seams for both pieces and my side seams for both pieces. So they're serged independently. I'm going to now just straight stitch down the whole center back, and then we can press that open and mark for our big old pleat that's back there. So 5/8 of an inch down. Make sure you back stitch a couple stitches. All right, I think what I'm going to do before I'm going to press this open, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and serge my hemline for my front and my back now, so that then they will press open at the side seam, but this hemline will be finished. So I think I'm going to press it real quick and serge those hemlines.
Okay, I've sewn this up and serged it. That's what it looks like. And I went ahead and serged that hemline too on both pieces. So here's my front. I've got the hemline serged on it. And when I do that, it looks like this. So you want to make sure it fits if you're going to serge across those seams, because it's harder to fit them once you've stitched them down like that. Now we're going to put in our pleat. So they have us, after sewing it, find our little markings and just baste across. I can tell you that it's a little easier to do this if you find your little markings. So I have my little notches. There's this little tiny cut there. And then I sew down 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch. I sew those together first. So they have us, after sewing it, find our little markings and just baste across. I can tell you that it's a little easier to do this if you find your little markings. So I have my little notches. There's this little tiny cut there. And then I sew down 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch. I sew those together first. Then I can lay one seam on top of the other like that. And it's quite easy to keep it together to baste down. I just think it makes it a little bit easier than trying to keep two raw edges together. After basting, it looks like this from the front, and it looks like that from the back.
All right, so here's my back. I have not pressed down the pleat yet, but there you can see the pleat and the seam. It looks really nice. I have my little notches marked. So we are now to step 13 is stay stitching our yoke pieces. So I have both of our yokes out and I've stay stitched my little necklines. And then they have you press back the seam allowance on one and trim it down. And whoops, and that is for later when we attach everything at the shoulder. That's why they have us do that. So one, and I believe if it were me, the one that is trimmed back would be the one that I would be putting on the inside. Is that what they do? It is. Okay, so we're going to take one of our yokes, right sides together with our back dress, and we're going to line up our little notches and get this ready to go. But what we want to do is we're going to put both yokes on. So I'm going to pin one down, actually. So right sides together for one, and then the other one is going to be right side to wrong side. My fabric is so similar, I have to really watch that I don't accidentally get them wrong because that's really close. And then we're going to stitch this. I'm not as concerned about the whole shoulder thing, though you certainly can pre-press and do all of that if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and get this put together first so that I keep straight which one is my right side and which one is my wrong side of my yoke. All of that seam allowance will be on the inside. So this is a self-enclosed yoke, which is my favorite kind. And it makes everything nice and neat and finished and pretty. Now this does call for bias tape. And good golly, I hope I have some red or something bias tape in there. I can always make my own. We're ready to stitch this, I think. Double check that all your layers are lined up. You have no slippage, and we'll stitch away. What happens is we have a yoke with the pleat below it, and the yoke from the inside comes up. So on the inside, that seam is completely finished, and on the outside, that's completely finished. Now, this one that's the inside is the one that I'm going to mark my 5/8 inch and trim off. They have us press it. I'm looking to see why they press it, why it matters so much. Yeah, I don't know why they do it that way, because we could easily, okay. So, can I just say, what we can do instead, we're ready now. I'm going to give it a press, so let me press it real quick, and then we're going to talk about the shoulder seam and doing that little trimming out thing. Let me give this a quick press.
All right, we're ready to put a dress together at the shoulder. So here is the front of my garment, and here's my yoke. I have right sides together, pinned through only the outside yoke. Now I'm going to take, instead of doing that whole trim and flip and all that stuff, I'm going to take my yoke, that's my inside yoke, my wrong side of my dress, and I'm going to flip it around. So I'm going to see if you can see this. So here it is. I'm going to flip it this way, and I'm making a little sandwich. Now I can stitch that, flip it around, and it's completely self-enclosed. So I'm going to do that for both of my shoulders as an easy way to completely enclose this. You don't want to stretch it, but it's easy, and then you can always come back and grade that seam if you want to. You don't have any little top stitching or any odd things going on. I think this is the way to do it. Okay, so it's sort of a clumpity-lumpity mess right now, but once I stitch it and flip it around, it should hopefully make sense. You want to make sure you don't have any pleats and that you're not stretching or pulling anything. Here's that shoulder that I just sewed, and if I flip it around, now you can see this is the inside, the wrong side, and it's completely finished off. And here's the right side, completely finished off. Yeah, I think that's just the nicer way to do it. It's a little harder to explain in the directions, but it's not as hard to show on camera. That side's ready to press. Now I can come over and do the other side the same way.
I just showed the close-up of doing this shoulder all enclosed. So now I'm going to show it to you a little bit more from a distance, because sometimes one is easier than the other. So here is the right side back, and I'm going to just use that yoke only. So there's two yokes. I'm going to let the inside one fall down for a minute. I'm going to come over here and grab my right side of my front. We're going to pin those together, and then we're going to grab our inside yoke. So here's my shoulder sewn together. Here's my inside yoke. Now we're going to flip that yoke, and I'm flipping around. So like here's my yoke, how it is normally. I'm going to take it so that it's the burrito method, but you don't have to do a lot of rolling. We're just going to flip and be careful. If you're not careful, you'll stretch it out, but we don't have to. And we can actually unzip our front if we need to, if it makes it easier and gives us a little more room to work. We're just going to flip that around, pin it and stitch it. And this is how I get my self-enclosed shoulders instead of doing the pressing, trimming, flipping, folding, stitching that they're doing, where it looks like they might even be hand stitching it down too. So yeah, not doing that. Okay, so it looks like this right now. We'll stitch it. Okay, now that it's stitched, we just flip it back around. This is the wrong side. Shoulders are completely enclosed on the inside. And here's the right side. Completely enclosed shoulders, ready to be.
Okay, I'm sitting here editing and I want to say to you, wait. Don't sew along with me right now. Stop for a second and watch ahead. If you're at this section and you're sewing with me, don't go any farther, because I end up ripping this out and fixing it. Their directions make it harder and less finished on the inside than what I end up deciding to do later on, and it's actually easier and looks so much prettier from the inside. It just makes your garment look more finished. So wait a little bit. Wait till I get to the little neckline placket where we finish off the zipper. All of that. You just wait. You'll see. Okay, back to sewing.
Pressed. So we have completely done our yoke. So the way I did it, this gets us all the way to 19. We don't have to slip stitch because it's already sewn and enclosed. And then they go ahead and top stitch down the yoke at the back, which certainly you can do, and it actually will probably lay a little nicer. I think I might even want to top stitch my my shoulder yoke up here. Getting close now. Okay, so I'm going to give this a press, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and top stitch my yoke along the back and along the shoulder. I'm going to unzip this to make life easy for pressing and so forth. Okay, meet you back here after some top stitching, and we'll move on to collar. If the fabric you're working on, you find it's seeming really thick in here at the yoke where you have 3 layers, you can grade that if you need to. Mine's laying fine and pressing out fine, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, pressing and top stitching of the yoke, and then we'll be back for the next thing. So working in the little front placket piece that covers the zipper, and I finished off my yoke the way I did it, happy about all that. But the way they are doing this front placket, we should have added it a long time ago, and it could have been caught in with that front yoke and completely enclosed. And I'm kind of mad that I didn't pay attention to what they were doing, and I'm not going to have it self-enclosed the way I wanted. Kind of mad about it. Just sharing. I could have done this differently. I could completely rip out my yokes at the shoulders and enclose it. And that's kind of where my head is right now. Do I want to rip them out or not? While I'm still deciding if I'm going to rip out that yoke so I can enclose, get this caught in there. Just struggling with that. We're going to go ahead and sew the little center front of the yoke. I have serged around the outer edge of the yoke, not the neckline and not the center front, because that's where it's going to get enclosed. But I have around these outer edges independently. I have 2 little yokes. we're just going to sew this little tiny seam right here, 5/8 of an inch. We have a marking, so we know where to sew to. And we're going to get that in real quick, and then our yoke, our placket front will be put together. All right, so now we have a placket that's sewn together, just this little bit at the bottom, like that. Okay, and we can even press it if we want to. I'm going to wait, however, because we've got zippery stuff to do. So now we're going to sew this to this zipper, and it's going to enclose all of the zippery parts. We're going to put right sides together. So here's my zipper, and this is the right side of my garment. Let me flip this around. Okay, here we go. So right side of garment, here's my zipper, and this is actually going to go on the inside. So when we sew this, like this, we're going to sew it next to the teeth, and this is going to flip around, go to the inside, and enclose that. So I'm going to pin this on. Now they sew it pretty stinking close to those teeth. I'm going to sew over a little bit and have more pressed to the inside. I would prefer to do that. That way I don't have to worry about catching that placket into the zipper teeth when I'm zipping it up and down. And we're going to just stitch it now. Because I'm not going to be worrying about stitching close to my teeth, I can use my 1/4 inch foot and just stitch down this seam line, and it won't catch the zipper, but it will catch the zipper tape, which is the part I want. I'm going to leave my little bottom down here free for now. I have not cut off my tape at the top where it's too long. We don't want to have, here's my zipper tape, I've not cut that off yet, because I don't want to lose my zipper head. It'd be easy to zip it right off the edge if you do. So we leave it on till absolutely the very end. Here's my front of my yoke. Here's my zipper. Here's my shirt. We're going to sew this little piece right here, just this little straight piece between zipper and neckline. And this will not be sewn on the 5/8. You can also put on your regular zipper foot if it helps. So I'm going to be sewing it 1/4 of an inch. I've got the zipper teeth up against my foot, and that will put my zipper teeth 1/4 inch away from where I'm stitching. And then I'll check it and see if I like that length or if I want to go a little closer. All right, let's look at it and see. So from the inside, completely enclosed the zipper teeth, so I can press that away from there. Yeah, I think that's what I want. It's far enough away that I won't catch the zipper head, because see, the zipper head's bigger on the back. Yep, that's what I want. And then I'll come down and see what I need to do to neaten up at the bottom, but that looks pretty great. Okay, I'm going to do that again for this side. Okay, so I totally did the zipper inside different than what they did. They stitch it, they make a little center front, they stitch it in just as close to the zipper teeth as possible. And I find that when you do that, here's the zipper head catches on this. So instead, I just sewed it together a tiny bit down here. I've sewn it in about 1/4 of an inch, so you can see I've sewn it to there. I've flipped it over and I've top stitched a little bit too to keep it nice and secure, and then I've come down at the bottom and just tacked it. So this is how it looks on the inside. This is how it looks on the outside. You can see how it looks when it flips to the other side. So you see a little more zipper tape, but the zipper slides nice and easy, and that zipper head does not get caught on that little placket piece. Now let's talk this little shoulder area. So here's my neckline. I've pinned it down and I folded under the seam allowance. And of course I've got to adjust it. And then you can baste it down or whip stitch it to this. If I had been thinking, I would have sewn this first and then come back and done my shoulder. And I'm really thinking about ripping out the shoulder and putting that up in there, because it just makes it so much neater and flatter, and you don't have all this extra stuff, and it's not against the outside of the shirt where it's going to kind of show a little bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to rip my shoulders out and stick it in. Bummer. Do I want to rip out those shoulder seams and redo it? Yes. Yes, I do. It makes me unhappy. This calls for glasses. And it's all top stitched too. I have to rip out all the top stitching and the shoulder seam far enough to get that in. Okay, I'm not ripping completely out. It's like you don't have to erase the entire paragraph when you mess up one word. And that's the way it is with sewing too. You don't necessarily have to rip out the entire seam. So I have ripped out far enough that I can get that in. I'm going to treat it just like the rest. Now it's longer, and that's because of how I stitched it over and did all the things, but it won't matter because I can trim it off. Now I can catch this. Yeah, that was worth it. It's not going to take me hours. Okay. I'm going to catch this in here. Okay. So much better. So now this is the outside. I just need to redo my top stitching. This is the inside, and that's caught. Isn't that better? That's so much better. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and then we're going to put together our collar.
All right, we're ready to move on to collar. I've now got my facings all on the inside finished off and pretty. Super pleased with that. Okay, so we're going to take the piece that's interfaced, we're going to stitch it 1/2 inch, we're going to do some little clippity clips, and we're going to press down that 1/2 inch. And they're recommending trimming out a little bit too, so you can trim out to 3/8. So if you think this would be our 5/8 line, this is our 1/2 inch line, you could take off 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch or so just to make it a little less bulky. Depends on your fabric, but we're going to go ahead and press this down, and then we'll be ready to put the 2 collar pieces together. All right, here's my collar. I've pressed it down. I have not trimmed anything. Underneath there are my little markings. You can see that little marking right there. Mine's right there on the inside. So we're going to just stitch around this at 5/8 of an inch, and then we will be ready to turn and press, and we're definitely going to clip out these little corners so that it lays nice. And then this long edge up here is the one that will get stitched to the neckline of the dress. All right, here is my very pretty little collar. I'm getting ready to press this outer edge. So you can see this is the 1/2 inch that we stitched right there. And then it's been turned. I trimmed out that corner nicely, so it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to give it a quick press, and then we're going to start pinning it onto our neckline. All right, so I have pinned it on. It fits beautifully. It's going to match right in the front. That's the way this, it depends, colors can be done a lot of different ways. So when we start to sew this, we're going to actually pull it this way just a little bit, get right in here, sew our 5/8 of an inch all the way around, and then this will all tuck up inside and come over, and we will stitch that down, and collar will be done, and we'll be ready to do side seams and hem. And when we do that, see, this is my excess of my zipper. I'll trim that off, but that's all going to go on the inside too. Show you that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and stitch it on real quick. Before we start stitching down the collar, come in and make a few little clips along this neck edge just so that it lays a little nicer. This edge is smaller than the sewn edge, and it can make the collar kind of pucker in this area if we don't give it a few little clips to give it some freedom. My mic died. Hold on, let me plug in the other key. Okay, my mic died. So I've got it charging. The collar is on. So I think I'm gonna go ahead, before I do hand stitching and hemming, I'm gonna go ahead and just sew my side seams because it's easy. There's not a lot to it. We don't need a lot of this explanation. So I'm just gonna flip this around and sew my side seams real quick before I stop for the day, I think. And then tomorrow we'll come back, we'll do our bias, we'll finish our little bit of collar, and we'll do our hem. Now, after I do the side seam, I could go ahead and do hem too, actually, because there's not much to it. They're doing the 5/8 inch narrow hem. I'm just gonna turn up a hem and top stitch it. I've already serged that edge. Like to go ahead and get the hem in because it's something easy to do. I think I'm going to go ahead and just put the hem in. That will be done. So I'm going to go ahead and press this. I'm just going to top stitch in a hem. Probably going to turn up like 5/8 of an inch. I think it allows for 5/8, so I'm going to just use their length and top stitch in a hem. I'm going to press and stitch, and I will see you tomorrow. I'll look different. Okay, friends, I'm back. New day. New outfit. I'll link this cute, it's a vintage pattern that I made. I graded it up a little bit, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure I graded it up. Well, anyway, this is the title card. It'll be linked below if you'd like to make it. I think it's a quick sew. I love it. I love this shirt so much. I have put my hem in. So I just turned up and hemmed the whole thing and gave it a press. The collar is attached. I have not yet trimmed off all of my little zipper parts. We are now ready to go ahead and whip stitch down this collar. So I'm going to show you that close up. It's just some handwork. Okay, I have trimmed off my ends and I'm coming up here to this corner. Just going to pull it so that this, so you can see there's my seam. It lines up perfectly. Isn't that nice? Back up a little bit. I've got my thread with a knot in the end. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to get my thread on the inside with the knot because I want all of that to the inside. Just kind of close to where I'm going to start. And now I'm going to come and pick up this thread right here. And I'm going to come through, and on this side there's a thread. I hope it shows in the camera. Now I'm just doing a single thread here. If you're more comfortable, do double in your needle, whatever you're comfortable with. And we're going to come and get either every thread or every other thread. And I'm just going to whip stitch. There's lots of different hand stitches you can do. In this, right here at the beginning of the collar, we need to get it good and secure. This is where if we see the back side, it's going to show right here. So we also want to get it nice and neat. At the back of the collar, it's not going to show as much because it'll be against our bodies. But right here, it will. All right. So we're just going to do this all the way along, and then we'll hide our knot on the other end. And you can see I'm only getting this side of my fabric, so the other side, nothing's happening to it. It looks exactly the same. And I'm just going to sit here and whip stitch down. Now that I've sewn a little bit, you can see how it's pretty much invisible. Okay, we're just going to keep on whipping. After that, all that's left
is the bias in the arm side. I found red bias. It is 1/4 inch double fold. Anyway, it's what I've got. I may just press it open. So because it needs a single fold, I could make my own, but I think I will just go with this red. It's the same as my zipper, and from the inside, it's not going to, it's going to look fine. So I'm just going to press open my double fold for this application, and that will work just fine for what we're doing.
We are now ready to work on our bias tape. This is the inside of my collar. And the outside, you can't see a thing, it just needs pressed. So let's talk about our bias and our armholes. So the first thing I did was press my double fold to make it single fold. So we've got that done. And now I am starting at the underarm. So this is my side seam, the underarm. I'm folding back a little bit where I'm starting so that when I cross, this will be finished off and we won't have a raw edge. I'm opening it up, so if you look at my bias, this side is a little bit smaller than this side where it's folded up. Can you see that? I'm using the wider side. That's the side I'm going to stitch down. We have 3/8 of an inch in here, so I'm just going to stitch pretty much right in the ditch of this fold. And then this whole thing will get folded to the inside. We will do a little clipping along this. This frays so badly, look at that, that I have done a little bit of stay stitching just to keep it from, you can see how it's just about frayed all the way through. So I have stay stitched my armholes because of that, and you may need to too, depending on your fabric. So I'm going to pin this on and then I'll show you how to sew it. I'm ready to start stitching. What I had to do because of how the tape was wound, I started on this end and then I cut it and then I refolded. So this is where I'm starting. I originally started up here for pinning, and that's just because of how it was wound on the thing. You can see this is my wider edge. That's what I want to start with. And normally I pull pins as I go. I'm going to kind of leave them for the most part if I feel like it's safe to do so, because there's just a lot of curvy curve here. I also don't want to stretch my armholes. I'm stitching in the ditch as best I can. Make sure that's okay. Make sure my seams don't get flipped. Okay, I'm coming back to where I started now. And I'm just going to let this fall over. All right, let's look at it. Okay, so I'm all the way around my armhole. So from the outside, it currently looks like this. This is all going to get folded to the inside. We want to fold it so that we have just a tiny peek of the right side to the wrong side, so that we don't have any of that bias showing. So we're going to just fold this down, and of course look at all of this fraying. I'm going to have to trim away. We're going to trim that down, and then we're going to top stitch it on from this side. So I'm going to pin it real well and make sure everything's, I'm going to actually trim all of these little threads too, and pin it and top stitch it, and we will be, and I'm going to start here in the underarm just like I did before. I'm going to make a few little clips in these areas where it's tight, especially in the underarm. That's where it's the tightest. I'm going to take a few little clips there, and we'll be ready to stitch it. Okay, we are clipped and trimmed, and I have folded under, so this is how it looks on the inside. This is how it looks on the outside, and I'm ready to feed it under the foot. This is 1/2 inch wide tape, so I am going between the 1/2 and the 3/8 for stitching. So I'm actually going between the two measurements. Here's my half. My 3/8 is underneath there, and I'm ready to top stitch, starting in the underarm. I can hear my needle popping. It's time to change the needle. All right, so that's how it looks on that side, and this is how it looks on the wrong side. We're just gonna make a circle. If you don't backstitch, it's okay, because you're gonna come back around and catch it on the other side. Okay, here's my old stitching.
We're ready to press it and try it on. It's completely done. Oh, I love this color so much. How fun. Okay, I'm going to give it a quick press. I'll meet you over there and we'll see how it looks on. Okay, I love this dress. I love everything about it. If anything, I would have lengthened it a little bit more in the front, but I really like the shape of the hem, how I did it. Okay, I'm going to step back and just let you see how cute it is. The pocket, it feels like I'm wearing nothing. Like this feels, it's so lightweight. It's so easy to wear. I love it. I need to make it in something that would travel a little better. This wrinkles a little bit. So you can see how floaty it is and lightweight. I love it. Just love it. Love everything about it. Love the zipper, love the pocket, love the fullness. I like my fabric. If you choose a softer fabric, it will lay even better than this. It will lay straighter, flatter. This one has enough body that it kind of swings out just a bit. So you can see how it kind of falls from the body. You can see my hemline. I added 2 inches in the very back and eased it back to nothing. And you can see as I stand here, it must have had a little bit of a high-low hem to begin with, because I never have a regular hem come out with the fronts shorter than the back. So it must have had a little bit of a high-low. I made it even more dramatic, which I don't mind a bit. I think it's very cute. I don't think this one would look good belted. I'm just going to do this because of the fabric. Now, if I had chosen a softer fabric, it might have belted better. I have a belt up here. Let's just give it a look. I think I'm not going to like it. One thing I know about my particular figure, because I am full on bottom and in the bottom, is that sometimes when belting, it actually accentuates the rear end instead of sort of dissipating the problem. So here it is with a little brown belt. Okay, number one, belting it makes it shorter, which is not as flattering a length for me. I don't like the way that looks on my legs. Not happy about that. And in the back, you can kind of see it makes me look a little fuller. It does give me a waistline. And I think if I had a softer fabric or a tiny bit longer, a belt would be fine, but not for this one. Well, it took me 2 days, but mainly because I fussed around a lot, and also wanted to quit early, do family things. So this could definitely be a one-day sew. I think it's very straightforward. I would love to know if you make it. If you would like a little bit of a sleeve, it would be easy to add in a little cap sleeve to this if you'd like it. I could also see making this a top, just making this a cute shirt. Eliminate the pocket, make it about this length, again, sort of high-low, and would make a great little top. Also could easily lengthen the zipper if you want to use it for nursing, or if you just need ease for getting in and out. Thanks for sewing with me. I'll see you again next week for another fun video.